Okay, the following video is to just demonstrate a couple of the features that are built into the rig. One of the first things you're going to notice is that if you get close enough to the clavicle, or even to the humerus or the radius ulna bones, you're going to see that there's these little lines, which are actually bones themselves. They're there just for twists. So, for example, any vertices that are closer to the base of the clavicle will go to the clavicle bone. Any vertices that are closer to the tip of the clavicle will go to the twist. And for the humerus, it's the other way around. So you're going to put the vertices that are closest to the base to the twist, and any bones that are any vertices that are closer to the tip of the humerus will go to the humerus itself. Now for the radius ulna bone, you're going to have the twist only for the wrist. That one's the wrist, and you just you can pick how much of influence that's going to have. So it's built in there. Another thing you want to consider is that these hip bones, these are not bones you actually ever need to skin to. They're just there for the IK, because we're using a homemade IK that you're going to see and probably going to appreciate and never want to use another one in Max anyways. The IK in Max is precise. For those of you that are interested in knowing what's about, it's a non-iterative approach, meaning it's a linear solution, so it's actually very accurate, and you're never going to get those weird pops and things. For the most part, everything you need to know about the IK is in the IK controller. You have a slider to switch between FK and IK, so let's say this is the initial position. So at this point now you're just rotating, let me get to local, there we go. You're just rotating the bones, and you're just putting keys on the bones themselves, or you can switch to IK, in which case it's the IK controller that's making the arm move. There's a couple of other things in here that are useful. For example, you can have it stretch so that it actually uses the IK. So what it's actually doing is it's translating the bones, which if you skin it is the most ideal situation. You don't want to scale them. Scale them causes all kinds of weird things, whereas just translating them makes a very smooth skinning stretch effect. There's also a couple of other features. For example, there's two sliders. One of them is for rotation constraint, which means if you want the IK controller to have the hand lock onto it, you use that. If you just want the hand, if you just want the arm to follow the IK but not the rotation, just turn it off. The other feature is if, let's say that your character put his hand, I don't know, on a table or on his hips or something, you can use this object instead, which is no longer part of the upper body. So that means if I were to move the hips, the hand stays locked down. This is a nice little feature to have. So you can switch that on or not. You can use either one of the two controllers. Another thing is this little ball here, which controls all the fingers. You can do like a fanning effect on the fingers. You've got controls for every finger. You've got thumb curling of every kind. It's been tested a few times, quite a few times. It's pretty robust in that sense. And you can also just go in there and rotate each one independently. So that's not a problem. Another thing that you're going to probably appreciate if you're animating, if you go to the curve editor, every bone in here, because of this homemade IKFK, if you look at the bone itself, it's got a layer that's FK and another layer that's IK. And all the slider is doing is controlling the percentage of each. So it makes it really easy to edit your stuff. Another thing that's built in that's kind of useful is the ability to change what these bones look like. At the moment it looks like an XSI bone, but you can change that. You can make it so that it looks like a joint. So for example, and here's another feature, I locked this bone down with using the pin stack thing. You can multi-select a couple of them, and you can, I just rotate it, but it doesn't matter just for the sake of showing. You can multi-edit like all the bones at the same time by using the pin stack. You can turn them into lines, into edges. You can do edge, so on. One of the ones I like doing is I like leaving it as a line, and then I use these things at the bottom, which have to do with the pins, and I'll explain what the pins are. Essentially, originally, it was like an edge pin, and here I'll just offset them. You can change their size, you can offset them, you can slide them. So they were originally meant for showing like a voodoo pin. You can change what angle they're on and so on. So you can have these pins stick out of the bones, and you can select them from the outside of the mesh. But I've actually grown to like the concept of a ring. So here I'm just gonna not have any offset and just have it so that it goes on the outside of the rig. So it makes it easy to select. So essentially I just select the ring and I'm selecting the bone. It's the same thing. And you can do that for any of the bones that are in here. Other things that are built in, for example, are at the foot. It's very simple. If you want to lift from the toe, you've got this toe controller. If you want to rotate on the ball, like you have it. It's always on the outside. The only one on the inside is just for the toe itself, so you can make the toe wiggle and so on. But the box itself is what moves the whole thing. So you can move it, and the rest of the foot follows. Of course, like any traditional rig, you have a pull vector. So this is where like for example, your knee is going to be pointing. Same thing for the arms. So nothing too exciting there. Very standard, although some programs don't have that. And then if you have one for the upper body, so you can move the entire upper body and the feet stay on the ground. And you have another one for the entire. It's like a root or a subroot, only you can rotate on it. This is good for when you're animating something that's underwater or such. Of course, you have a root, also known as a master controller, so you can move the entire body. So yeah, that's in rough all the features that are built into it for the most part.